The Stylophone 350s is probably my favourite stylophone instrument out there, and I've always wanted to have one, but it's one of those things that I've just never got around to actually owning myself. Whether that's because it's so hard to find, because it's kind of expensive, I don't know, but I just don't have one. Although I did borrow one belonging to the Stylophone Orchestra last year, which is how I made this video, which was a Stylophone 350s guide. Very recently I came across a really cool plugin that tries to imitate the 350s called the Drawbar 350, and I decided that I would make a little video today all about how it works and all the settings that I covered in my 350s guide. I tried to kind of recreate in the Drawbar plugin to see how close I could get, and actually I was pretty pleased with how close I got, but there are some kind of limitations and differences that I'm going to talk to you guys about today. So let's get into it. Okay, so here we have the Drawbar 350 by Rhythmic Robot. It's a surprisingly cheap plugin. This is not a sponsored video, by the way, but it's a surprisingly cheap plugin compared to the actual 350s. It only cost me about £9. And it's pretty cool on the whole. So one of the first things I mentioned in my guide video is the register of the 350s, which is limited. Well, in this case, the Drawbar 350 has an unlimited register because it's a MIDI instrument, so obviously you can change the octave according to what MIDI has to offer. What you've got here are these drawbars, hence why it's called Drawbar. And they are still kind of relative to each other in terms of register, but yeah, as I said, the overall register limitations don't apply anymore. In terms of what we had as the photo control switch with the wah-wah, so the wah-wah was like a muted brass effect. You get around that in various ways through the different settings that I'll go through later, but for the photo control, which was like a kind of mixture of vibrato, level and volume control, is now controlled by this thing called vibe. Vibe kind of is more than that, really. It's kind of a fast vibrato that you can increase and decrease, but yeah, it's kind of, that's where the photo control comes in, and in this case you don't really have a slow vibrato function. So bite, they call this a tone, but I like to think of this as a kind of frequency filter. So down here you got basically almost no sound, and then as you sweep it up you get more and more sound. Both Anger and Fury are like distortion plugins. They call Anger just straight distortion and Fury like a screamer distortion. And this is something that we didn't have in the 350s, definitely. Although certain elements of the sounds and the settings when you played them did have a slight bit of bite to them, a slight bit of, not aggression, but just a little edge to them that really these little settings here do help to bring out a little bit, which I'll show you more of later. Then you've got the chorus knob over here that just adds like a bit of stereo wash to the entire thing. I tend to have this on the whole time with everything, because without it the sound really sounds a lot thinner, and it doesn't, in my opinion, sound like a 350s. And I also have this on the whole time. This is like an amp, so it really fattens the sound. In terms of like decay control, you haven't really got a decay, you've just got attack and release. With the reiteration setting that you had with the second stylus, obviously you don't have any styluses here, so the only way around that is to program your MIDI notes to play really quickly. And of course, like the actual stylus sliding between the notes, you don't have that at all here, but I have found that you can sort of like recreate that if you really like keep your finger on the key when you switch to the next key and like play it really quickly between, basically play all the notes in between the one that you would have slid to, if that makes sense, and play it quickly with your fingers like staying on the previous key as you move, and that sort of recreates it, but you do have to be pretty on it with that. although you can always use the MIDI editor, obviously. So as with the 350s, you have the woodwind, brass and strings. They are laid out slightly differently here, but you still have exactly the same thing going on. You've still got 16, 8, 4 and 2 on woodwind, which are the lengths of the organ pipes, so higher to lower octaves. You've got 8 and 16 on brass, and you've got 2 and 4 on strings. And you can combine these not only in different ways in terms of just whether they're on or off, but you can also blend the volumes slightly. So you can have just a little bit of woodwind and a tiny bit less of brass, whatever, and then you can have all the strings like that, for example. So that's what that sounds like. Again, you also don't have that aspect of the pedal or the inputs and outputs, like playing things through the speaker, etc. But again, vibe is kind of your pedal replacement in this case. But yeah, overall, the Drawbar 350 is a pretty close call with in terms of like replicating the 350s. I think it's not bad at all. And it adds a new dimension to it because it gives you more options to add a bit more aggression to the sound. Variety as well, because of the blending of the different sounds you have here, as opposed to either on or off. You don't have the slow vibrato, as I was saying, option, but I'm sure that can be recreated in other ways. Now I'm going to show you guys about 20 odd different settings based on the ones from my 350s guide, recreated in the Drawbar. So let's get started. So first of all, you have the photodynamic control. This is demonstrating the really basic sound of the photo control in the 350s and how to use it. Let's have a listen to that. Like your hand going up and down on the photo control. That's what I was trying to recreate there. I think that's pretty close if you ask me. Next up, we have the trombone effect. 16 brass selected like you would have on the 350s. The byte has been automated. I had to assign that to a MIDI CC to use that because it's a weird thing. Ableton doesn't recognize the automation. And then I have the vibe on notch 4 from the left, and anger's down, fury's down, all these down. By default, I have the chorus on and the CAB on as well. Next up, we have the basic vibrato control. So that's what it looks like. The vibe switch automated. And then you've got 16 brass down. And like adding vibrato to the odd note of your choice can be done through that. Next up, we have my synthy sound setting. You've got woodwind 4 down and strings 2 down, vibe on notch 7 from the left, and you've got chorus and CAB on, attack, release down, anger and fury down. So I did try and do a little bit of that kind of closed gap playing there. It's not that clear, but just to try and recreate that slidey sound. There's one thing always with the stylophone, the slidey sound, that you just cannot capture perfectly because it does just add a little bit of high-end crunch. But as I said, that's as close as you can get, I think. Maybe a bit of resonance if you wanted to as well with a filter plugin. Automated on those particular points if you really wanted to go mad there. Next up, we've got the recorder / piccolo. You've got woodwind 2 down, chorus and CAB on, vibe on notch 4 from the left with automation on it, byte at a default 7 from the left, and anger down, fury down, attack down, release down. It is a bit tricky here because this doesn't have a slow vibrato, so it's not quite the same, but I think we came pretty close in terms of like the piccolo sound. And some of these sounds are really like relative to register as well. I did say like we have unlimited register available, but if we really want to make it accurate to the 350s sound, which is what we're doing here, not necessarily to accurate to the instrument, it does depend on register. So piccolo recorder, like really a lot higher, is going to be more accurate to the sound than lower. Next up, we've got the fast vibrato honky synth. For this one, we've got woodwind 8 down, strings 2 down, bite at 7 from the left, vibe on notch 8. Next up, we got the short decay pipey / glitchy synth. For this one, we've just got strings 4 down, bite 7 from the left. We've got vibe on notch 8 from the left. And with this one, the articulation is meant to be like really short because we've got a supposedly short decay, which again we don't have here. So the only way to get that is to play the notes really short, like yourself, in terms of articulation. Next up, we've got the full mellow over wah wah. That's what it looks like. We've got brass 8 down. You've got vibe from 2 to 0 on the left, so really, really low. We've got bite automated for the wah wah. So again, I put that into a MIDI CC. As you can see, I also put a kind of filter there to kind of recreate that wah wah feel, because it doesn't quite have that without that. Next up, we've got the fast beeping reiteration synth. We've got bite 7 from the left. We've got the vibe notch 8 from the left. We've got strings 4 and 2 down. We've got the MIDI editor to play fast notes. As you'll see over here, they're really kind of short notes. 350s guide oboe, so all the 350s guide instruments now. You've got bite automated 7 from the left, and that's because we have it for constant photo vibrato kind of thing. Just adds that feel, and you've got 16 brass down. Yeah, so let's have a listen. Next, we have the muted trumpet setting. For that one, we've got vibrato from 2 to 0 from the left, so really minimal vibrato. Bite 3 to automate down from 7 from the left. Got anger on 5 from the left, just adds a little bit more energy to that muted trumpet sound. I've got brass 8 down. Muted trombone. Now for this one, again, you can see I've put an auto filter on there because it's got some photo wah wah on it. And this is what we've got in here. So we've got vibe 7 from the left, we've got anger 5 from the left, we've got bite automated down from 5 with MIDI CC, brass 16 down. And I'd say, like, as I've done here, you can add extra resonance and frequency automation to that, which is I did do. Let me just show it to you here. So yeah, just added a little bit there. It's not that detailed, but just a very basic thing to show you guys. In the bassoon, you've got vibe 7 from the left, bite 5 from the left, and woodwind 16 down, with everything else in the usual settings. Let's have a listen to that. And again, like with the other ones I said, this is very much dependent on you playing it in a low register to sound like the bassoon. For the piccolo, you've got bite between 7 and 9 from the left. You've got the vibe automated upwards from 3 with MIDI CC, and you've got 4 strings down and all the other usual settings. Next up, we have the tin whistle. For that one, we've got bite between 7 and 9 from the left. We've got vibe automated from 3 from the left, and we've got woodwind 2 down. For the flute, we've got bite between 7 and 9 from the left. We've got vibe automated from 3 from the left with MIDI CC, and we've got woodwind 8 down. Next up, we've got the banjo. As you can see, I've put some quick notes in again because we have the reiteration thing going on with this one. We've got brass 16 down, we've got vibe 7 from the left, we've got bite automated from 4 downwards. You've got an optional anger 7 from the left to add a little bit more energy to that. And optional frequency and resonance automation. I think I went not for it this time. because I was kind of debating whether or not to have it. Next up is the piano. That doesn't sound like a piano. So for this one, I had a sync delay, because with this one we did have a long decay, and I think that recreated it really well actually. Better, I think, actually, than the 350s is able to do in this case. And then inside, this is what we've got in the drawbar. We've got a very subtle sync delay, as I said. We've got bite 7 from the left, anger also 7 from the left, vibe automated upwards from 2 to 3, and strings 4 and 2 down. Let's have a listen. I think the original intention with the 350s to have that long decay was to have, like, it would be with a pedal, so it's not quite the same as a piano, obviously, but it's not bad going at all. If you did want to make it a bit more like a piano but still have the 350s sound, I'd probably, rather than a sync delay, I'd go for a very short delay. For the clarinet, we've got bite 7 from the left, we've got vibe automated up from 2 to 3 with MIDI CC, and we've got woodwind 8 down. Let's have a listen to that. With violin, we've got vibe automated up from 5 with MIDI CC. We've got anger on 9 from the left, just to give it that, I guess, that edge. And the bite almost on max, so it really needed some energy, this one. And brass 8 down, and all the other usual settings. Let's have a listen to that. So yeah, really a lot more aggressive, that one. And obviously it doesn't sound like a violin, but in my opinion, as close to the 350s violin as we can get. Next up, we've got the harmonica sound. Right, automated down from 8. We've got anger on 6, and we've got vibe on 3. And then we've got just number 8 brass down. The last two settings are ones that I used while I was in the Stylophone orchestra for the 350s, and so they're named after the songs that they were used for. So With Every Heartbeat was used for With Every Heartbeat by Robin, and We Are the Robots was used for We Are the Robots by Kraftwerk. So With Every Heartbeat, let's have a look at that one. We had bite 7 from the left, we had anger 7 from the left, vibe between 4 and 5, 16 and 8 brass down, and strings 4 down. And now We Are the Robots. So that's the classic tune We Are the Robots. So I recreated that one with the bite almost on max, just the one before, anger 4 from the left, and vibe 4 from the left as well, with all the other usual settings. And we've got 4 and 2 on woodwind down and 16 on brass down. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Drawbar 350. If you did enjoy it, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel if you're new. And I'll see you in another video very soon. Bye for now.